Marina wiped down the last table in the elegant dining room of the Meridian Hotel. Her shoulders ached from the double shift, but she kept her posture straight, her smile ready. At 42, she had learned that grace under pressure was everything in this business. The evening crowd had thinned to just a handful of guests. In the corner booth sat a couple she had been serving all night. Robert Chun, mid-50s, sharp suit, sharper eyes. He had that unmistakable air of someone who had built empires. His wife, Diana, wore a fuchsia dress that probably cost more than Marina's monthly rent. They were celebrating something. Anniversary, perhaps, their laughter carrying across the nearly empty room. Marina had served them their appetizers, their main course, their dessert. She had refilled their wine glasses with vintage that made her stomach flip when she saw the price. They had been polite, distant, the way wealthy people often were with service staff. Not unkind, just existing in a different atmosphere. Now came the part of her evening she both dreaded and needed. The requests that made some guests uncomfortable, others annoyed, a few touched. She approached their table, hands clasped in front of her black apron. "Excuse me," she said softly. "I hope you enjoyed your evening." Robert looked up, his expression neutral. "The service has been excellent." Marina felt her heart hammering. "Just ask. You need this. Thank you so much. I hope this isn't too forward, but I wonder if I might play something for you. On the violin. For a tip, of course. Only if you're interested." Diana's eyebrows rose slightly. Robert leaned back in his chair, and something flickered across his face. Amusement, maybe, or was it pity? "You play violin?" he asked. "Yes, sir. I keep it in my locker. I could play just one piece." Robert glanced at Diana, then back at Marina. A small smile played at his lips. "A waitress who plays violin. That's quite entrepreneurial of you." There was something in his tone that stung, just a little, not quite mockery, but close. The assumption that she was someone scraping by with a modest talent, try to squeeze a few extra dollars from wealthy diners. Diana touched her husband's arm gently. "Let's hear her play, Robert." "Why not?" He shrugged, still smiling. "Sure, we have time. This should be interesting." Marina felt her cheeks warm, but she nodded. "Thank you. I'll be right back." She walked to the staff area, her steps measured, professional. Inside, her hands trembled slightly as she unlocked her locker. The violin case sat where it always did, battered leather worn smooth from years of travel. She lifted it out, feeling its familiar weight. In the small mirror above the lockers, she caught her reflection. Tired eyes, hair pulled back in a practical bun. The uniform that marked her as help. She thought of another life, another version of herself. A girl of 19 in a concert hall in Vienna, wearing a black gown, holding the same violin under stage lights while 2,000 people held their breath. That was 23 years ago. A lifetime ago. She returned to the dining room, violin case in hand. Robert and Diana watched with polite curiosity. A few other remaining guests glanced over, sensing something unusual about to happen. Marina opened the case. The violin gleamed in the soft light. Its wood rich and deep. She had purchased it in Italy when she was 17, with money saved from her first professional performances. It had been with her through everything that came after. She lifted it, positioned it under her chin, feeling the old familiar fit. Her fingers found the strings without thought. The bow in her right hand felt like an extension of her arm. "What will you play?" Diana asked, her voice gentler than before. "Something I used to perform." Marina said simply, "Meditation from Thais, by Massenet." Robert's smile remained, but something shifted in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps. He knew the piece. It was one of the most beautiful, most challenging works ever written for violin. Marina closed her eyes for a moment, steadied her breathing. Then she began. The first note emerged pure and clear, a single thread of sound that seemed to suspend time itself. It floated to the dining room, tender and searching, full of longing. Her fingers moved along the strings with absolute precision, each note emerging exactly where it should, exactly how it should. The bow drew across the strings and long. singing strokes, creating phrases that rose and fell like breathing. The piece began simply, almost like a prayer, but as it progressed, Marina poured everything into it. The years of training that had started when she was 4 years old, the scholarships and competitions, the moment she was accepted into the Vienna Conservatory at 16, the debut at 19 that had critics calling her the next great virtuoso, and then the accident, the car crash that killed her husband of 6 months, left her with injuries that took 2 years to heal, the hands that wouldn't quite work the same way at first, the anxiety that made her shake before performances, the slow, painful decision to step away from the stage. All of it flowed to the violin now. The grief, the loss, but also the beauty she had found in ordinary moments, the kindness of strangers, the small dignities of honest work, the way music still lived inside her, even when she wasn't performing for thousands. The melody climbed higher, more intense, the emotion building with each phrase. Marina's body swayed slightly, moving with the music as she always had. Her eyes remained closed, seeing not the restaurant but some internal landscape, where sound became feeling became meaning. In the corner booth, Robert Chin sat frozen, his wine glass halfway to his lips. His mouth had fallen slightly open. Diana's hand had moved to her chest, her eyes glistening with tears. The other remaining guests had stopped all conversation. The bartender stood still, cloth in hand. Even the kitchen staff had emerged through the swinging doors, drawn by the sound. Marina was no longer a waitress playing for tips. She was what she had always been underneath everything else. An artist, a master of her instrument, someone who could take wood and strings and horsehair and create something that reached directly into the human heart. The piece built to an emotional peak, a moment of pure yearning, before beginning its descent into resolution. The notes became softer, more reflective, like someone remembering something precious but lost. The final phrase emerged slowly, reluctantly, each note falling like a gentle rain. The last sound hung in the air, vibrating into silence. Marina held her position for a long moment, letting the silence complete the piece. Then she lowered the violin and opened her eyes. The dining room was utterly still. Robert Chin had set down his wine glass. His face had transformed completely. The amused smile was gone, replaced by something raw and unguarded. His eyes were wet. Diana was crying openly, not bothering to hide it. Her hand clutched her napkin. Then Robert began to clap. Not the polite applause of obligation, but the thunderous applause of someone who had just witnessed something extraordinary. Diana joined him, standing from her seat. The other guests rose too, applauding. The staff clapped from the doorways. Marina felt her own eyes burning. She lowered the violin, nodding her thanks. Suddenly exhausted, Robert stood and walked to her, and she saw that his composure had completely cracked. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice thick. "I'm so sorry for my assumptions." That was extraordinary. That was one of the most beautiful performances I've ever heard, and I've heard it performed at Carnegie Hall, at the Royal Albert Hall. He paused, studying her face. "You're not just someone who plays violin. You're a professional, a real artist. How on earth are you working here?" Marina set the violin carefully back in its case. "Life has many chapters," she said quietly. "This is my current one." Diana had joined them, still dabbing at her eyes. "That was transcendent. I felt like you played directly to something in my soul. How long have you been playing?" "Since I was 4. I trained in Vienna. I performed professionally for several years." Marina closed the case, her movement slow and deliberate. Then life changed direction. "I stepped away from the stage about 20 years ago." "But your talent," Robert said, and he looked almost angry now, but not at her, at circumstances, at the universe. "Your gift, it's extraordinary. You should be performing. People should hear you." Marina smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "I just performed. You heard me. Sometimes that's enough." Robert shook his head. He pulled out his wallet, but Diana put her hand on his arm. "Robert," she said softly, "this isn't about money." He looked at his wife, and something passed between them, understanding. Then he nodded and put the wallet away. Instead, He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. "I'm going to tell you something," he said, holding the card but not yet offering it. "My name is Robert Chun. I run Chun Industries. We own a chain of hotels, yes, but also performance venues, concert halls, theaters. I'm on the board of 3 major symphony orchestras." He paused, his voice becoming more intense. "But more importantly, 26 years ago, I was going through the darkest period of my life. My father had just died. I was drowning in debt, trying to save his failing business. I was 30 years old and I wanted to give up." Diana took his hand, and Marina saw the decades of love in that simple gesture. "One night," Robert continued, "I walked into a small church in San Francisco. I was contemplating ending it all. I'm not religious, but I went in anyway, and there was a young woman practicing violin. She was alone, and she didn't know I was there. She played the same piece, Meditation from Thais." His voice broke slightly. "I stood in the shadows and listened, and something in that music reached me. It reminded me that beauty still existed, that there were reasons to keep going. I left that church, and I decided to fight, to rebuild, to survive." He held out the card to Marina now. "I never forgot that night. I never forgot what that music gave me when I had nothing else. And tonight, sitting here in my own hotel, you gave me that gift again. You reminded me why any of this matters." Marina took the card slowly, looking down at the embossed lettering. "I have a proposal," Robert said. "We're opening a new performing arts center in 3 months. A venue specifically designed for chamber music and solo performances. We need someone to lead the music programming, to curate performances, and to perform regularly themselves." Marina's breath caught. "Mr. Chun, I appreciate this, but I'm not sure I'm ready to perform professionally again." "You just did," Diana said gently, "and it was professional in every sense of the word. More than that, it was genuine. You weren't performing to impress anyone. You were sharing something real." Robert nodded. "I'm not asking you to be someone you're not. I'm not asking you to tour or to chase fame. I'm asking you to share your gift with people who need to hear it, in a space designed for intimacy and authenticity, with full creative control over what you perform and when." He gestured around the elegant dining room. "You asked to play for a tip. You shouldn't have to ask. The world should be asking you, begging you to play." Marina felt tears sliding down her cheeks now. She thought of the years she had spent rebuilding herself, the quiet strength it took to keep going after everything fell apart, the way she had found purpose in small moments, in serving others, in the rare times she let herself play. "I've been afraid," she admitted. "After my husband died, after the accident, I couldn't imagine being on stage again. The pressure, the expectations, it broke something in me." "Then we'll build something new," Robert said simply. "Something that honors who you are now, not who you used to be. You don't owe the world performances. But maybe you owe yourself a chance to play for more than just tips in empty restaurants." Diana stepped forward and took Marina's free hand. "I lost my sister 5 years ago," she said quietly. "She was my best friend. Tonight, when you played, I felt her presence. I felt like she was telling me something I needed to hear. That's the power of what you do. It's not just music. It's connection. It's healing." Marina looked at these 2 people, strangers an hour ago, now standing before her with open hearts. She thought about the path that had led her here, the brilliant career cut short, the years of grief and recovery, the choice to work with her hands and serve others, finding dignity in that service. But maybe there was room for another choice too, not a return to what was, but a step forward into something new. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Of course," Robert said. "Take all the time you need. But Marina, please know this. When I laughed earlier, when you asked to play, I was being arrogant. I was judging. I see that now. You've taught me something tonight about assumptions and about grace." He glanced at Diana, then back at Marina. "We'd originally planned to hire someone from one of the major conservatories, someone with an impressive resume. But resumes don't tell you about heart. They don't tell you about depth. You have something that can't be taught or bought. You have wisdom. You have truth in your playing. Marina carefully set down the violin case and wiped her eyes. I should confess something, she said. I used to be that person with the impressive resume. I performed with several major orchestras when I was younger. I won competitions. Critics call me promising. She smiled sadly. But promising just means you haven't done it yet. I did it for a while, and then I lost it. Not the ability, but the context. The life that made it possible. So I found a different way to live. A simpler way. And did it make you happy? Diana asked. Marina considered this. It made me steady. It made me grateful for small things. It taught me about dignity in all forms of work. But happy? Sometimes. In moments. When I play like I did tonight, in those minutes, yes, I'm happy. Then you deserve more of those moments, Robert said firmly. Not because you're running from anything, but because you're running toward something, toward what you're meant to do. The restaurant manager appeared then, hovering uncertainly at the edge of the conversation. Marina, is everything all right? Robert turned to him. Everything is more than all right. Marina will be finishing her shift early tonight, with full pay, and she'll be taking tomorrow off, also with pay. The manager looked confused, but nodded quickly. Of course, Mr. Chun. After he left, Marina laughed softly. You didn't have to do that. I know, Robert said, but I wanted to. Consider a small apology for underestimating you. Diana had been quiet for a moment, but now she spoke. Marina, can I tell you what I saw when you played? I saw someone completely present, not performing for approval, not trying to prove anything, just giving, offering beauty because you have it to give. That's rare. That's precious. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I work in philanthropy. I've spent decades trying to figure out what actually helps people. And I've learned that sometimes the most healing thing is simply to witness someone being fully themselves. You did that tonight. You were fully yourself. Marina felt something shifting inside her, like ice breaking up after a long winter. I think I've been hiding, she said slowly. Not just from performing, but from myself, from the part of me that needs to create. I told myself I was being humble, being practical, but maybe I was just being afraid. Fear makes sense, Robert said. After what you went through, fear is reasonable. But you know what I learned in that church 26 years ago? Listening to someone play in the darkness? I learned that beauty is an act of courage. Creating something beautiful when the world is hard, that's brave. He smiled, and it was warm now, genuine. So be brave. Not today, not tomorrow, but when you're ready. We'll wait. Marina picked up her violin case, holding it close. I'll call you, she said. I promise. I need to think, but I'll call you. That's all I ask, Robert said. Diana hugged her then, a real embrace, not the awkward social kind. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for reminding me what matters. As they left, Robert pressed something into Marina's hand. She looked down to find not money, but a check. A very large check. Enough to cover 6 months of rent, and then some. This isn't a tip, he said before she could protest. It's an investment in your future, in the performances you'll give, whether for us or for anyone else. Use it to buy yourself time. Time to heal, time to practice, time to decide what comes next. Marina's hands shook as she held the check. This is too much. It's not nearly enough, Diana said, but it's a start. After they left, Marina stood alone in the elegant dining room. The other guests had gone. The staff had returned to their work. The normal sounds of the restaurant resumed around her, but something had changed. Something fundamental had shifted in the architecture of her life. She opened her violin case one more time, looking at the instrument that had been her companion for 38 years. In the restaurant's soft light, it gleamed like something ancient and sacred. She thought about the girl she had been, the prodigy who had lived for applause and achievement, the young woman whose identity had been so wrapped up in success that when tragedy struck, the whole structure collapsed. But she also thought about the woman she had become, someone who understood that dignity exists in all honest work, Someone who had learned to find joy in small moments. Someone who no longer needed the approval of crowds to know her own worth. Maybe, she thought, she could be both. The artist and the ordinary person. The performer and the server. Maybe wisdom meant integrating all the parts of yourself, not choosing one and abandoning the rest. She closed the case gently, picked it up, and walked to the locker room. Tomorrow she would think about Robert's offer. She would consider what it might mean to perform again on her own terms. To share her gift not from a place of need or desperation, but from a place of fullness. But tonight, she had already performed. She had given everything she had to give, and it had been enough. More than enough. It had been exactly right. As she changed out of her uniform and back into her street clothes, Marina caught her reflection again. The tired eyes were still tired. The lines on her face were still there. But something else had appeared too. A light, a possibility. She had asked to play for a tip, and a billionaire had laughed, thinking her small. But she wasn't small. She had never been small. She had just been healing, growing in ways that didn't show on the surface. And now, maybe, she was ready to bloom again. Marina walked out into the cool evening air, violin case in hand, and for the first time in 20 years, she felt the future opening up before her. Not the future she had lost, but a new one she could choose, one she could shape with her own hands and her own music. The night was full of stars, and she was full of possibility. That was enough. That was everything. If this story touched your heart, I'd be so grateful if you'd take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps me create more stories that celebrate the quiet courage and unexpected beauty in ordinary lives. And please leave a comment below. I'd love to know what resonated with you, or if you've ever had a moment when someone saw your true worth when you least expected it. Thank you for listening.